Joseph is one of the most popular historical figures from the Bible. And who doesn't love the story of the apparent overnight success? How literally in one day he is pulled from prison and placed in this amazing position of power. And that should be an encouragement for all of us, that no matter what your situation is, how radically God can change things, even in just one day. But there's something more important, and we need to understand how Joseph used his gifts, his talents, where he put his focus that made him this amazing person of influence. See, Joseph did have this amazing dream from God, being promoted to power. But circumstances sure didn't look like that. He first is thrown into a pit. They plotted his murder. They sold him into slavery. And then he winds up in prison. But what we see is, in all of those situations, even though circumstances could not look more adverse, they couldn't look more out of alignment with the dream, God was at work. But in that, Joseph was still faithful. See, he was faithful to use his gifting, his abilities to serve others. See, think about him in slavery. And think about the cost of that faithfulness. So he's sold into slavery to Potiphar. And in Potiphar's house, he was faithful. And God used his gift to promote him. And what happens? He winds up in charge of the entire household. So much so that Potiphar would go on to say, I don't even pay attention to what I have. It's all in Joseph's care. But in spite of that, Joseph is falsely accused, and now he's thrown into prison. Things actually get worse. But what does Joseph do? There's nothing he can do. No idea how God is going to work. No ability to do anything to move forward his path to get out of prison. There was nothing he could do except choose to continue to be faithful, continue to serve those around him. Think of when he interpreted the wine steward's dream. He was serving the wine steward, and he brought him the encouragement that you will be released and restored. You will be released from prison and restored to your position of power and authority. And what he asked for, though, is, remember me when you get out of here. I'm innocent. I haven't done anything. But he is forgotten. See, it's easy to often assume that we don't see the immediate results of that faithfulness. It can be easy to come to the conclusion that it's a waste of time. But eventually, he is remembered. It is that faithfulness that actually paves the way for God to bring about his release and promotion. Joseph has two dreams from God of this impending crisis. And trying to understand them, the wine steward remembers Joseph. Literally, this is where he's brought from prison and placed before Pharaoh. And now he serves Pharaoh in interpreting the dream and giving him wisdom on how to navigate the coming crisis. And this is the point of the story everybody loves, where Joseph is in one day promoted. He goes from prison to this position of amazing power. I mean, he will be the second most powerful person in all of Egypt, which was the most powerful nation in the world at the time. And while I'm sure he enjoyed some of the perks of that promotion, of that power, the reality is, what did Joseph do? See, the reality is Joseph's focus, his emphasis now was he was working for the benefit of Egypt. Yes, he got those perks, but he was now serving the Egyptians. And it will have profound benefits he doesn't realize. It'll have profound influence he doesn't realize at this point. That it will go on, as we see later, that God will use him to save multitudes alive through the coming famine. He'll have this profound impact. But there was an area of influence he had no idea. See, he hasn't seen his family for years. No idea if he will ever see them again. He's literally a foreigner in a foreign land. But his faithfulness, his promotion, is preparing him for his ultimate purpose. See, God was using that famine to drive Jacob and the family, all of Israel, into Egypt. See, Egypt would be the incubator. That in Egypt, they would grow from a family of just 70 people, a small tribe, to a mighty nation. That was where God would multiply them, he would grow them, he would empower them, so they would eventually be able to go take the promised land. And it was Joseph's influence, because of his faithfulness and because of his position, that made a place for them. That when the moment came, when they're reunited, his influence gave them a position in a place called Goshen. And Goshen, while most people think of how bad Egypt was, it actually was perfect for them. See, Goshen was absolutely the best place in all of Egypt for Israel to grow into that mighty nation. And while there would be adversity later, God was using that to push them out to claim that greater inheritance. See, God was at work through Joseph, through his faithfulness, that did bring him the promotion, but more importantly, it brought him the influence to have this profound impact. Because after his dad dies years later, he tells his brothers, "You didn't do this to me. God did. God sent me ahead to make a place that many would be saved." But he goes on and says, to make a place for you, that you would become a mighty nation. See, yes, he got the promotion, but he had the perspective that it wasn't about him. And God is calling his people to be people of influence by the application of their gifts and their abilities to serve the world around us. And not to have this counterfeit influence, this superficial influence we see around us so often. And that's not to say that we can't post really cool pictures from our holiday and that our friends can't rejoice with us. But that there would be something more profound, something more impactful in our focus. And that would create that authentic influence that would bring, that impact, it would touch the people and the world around us. Joseph, through the highs and the many lows, maintained that focus. He maintained his emphasis on being faithful to serve those around him.